The uterus consists of an upper expanded portion, the body, and a lower narrow part, the cervix. This is the cervix of the uterus. The rounded upper end of the body is called the fundus. This is the fundus. The uterus receives the fertilized ovum from the fallopian tube if conception occurs. All subsequent embryonic and fetal development takes place within the uterus. If we talk about the uterine wall, it is composed of an outer layer which is called the perimetrium. The middle layer is the myometrium, which is actually the muscle of the uterus. These are the smooth muscles. And the innermost layer is called the endometrium. So this is the fundus of the uterus, this is the body of the uterus, and this cervical canal, that is the cervix, the narrow portion of the uterus, is called the cervix. And the walls of the uterus, the wall of the uterus is composed of the endometrium, the myometrium, and the perimetrium. Outermost is called the perimetrium. The endometrium is the mucosal lining of the uterus, and it consists of the epithelium and the lamina propria. The lining epithelium of the uterine mucosa is of simple columnar variety, and it consists of two types of cells. There are ciliated cells which bear kinocilia on their free surface, and there are secretory cells which are non-ciliated. The surface epithelium invaginates into the underlying lamina propria, and this is the uterine gland. And I have told you in first year MBBS that simple tubular branched glands. Uterus has got simple tubular branched glands. These glands are the glands are also lined by a simple columnar epithelium that resembles the surface epithelium of the endometrium. However, the endometrial glands are lined almost entirely by the secretory cells, and the ciliated cells are rarely seen in the glands. The lamina propria, also called the endometrial stroma, is highly cellular and contains the fibroblasts, macrophages, leukocytes, reticular fibers, and there is abundant extracellular matrix. The stromal fibroblasts are stellate in shape. These are star-shaped cells and more similar to the mesenchymal cells. During the reproductive life, the endometrium can be divided into two zones, the zona functionalis and zona basalis. There are two layers, the functionalis layer, which is thick superficial surface, the epithelium, lamina propria, and there are glands, and this is rich in capillary network. There are coiled arteries, and this is the portion which is sloughed at menstruation. And then we have got the zona basalis, the deep narrow lamina propria, and the glands are there, straight arteries. It regenerates when it is the functionalis, also called the stratum functionalis or the zona functionalis. Stratum functionale. The functionalis is also known as the stratum functionale or the zona functionalis, and it is the thick superficial zone that is sloughed off at the beginning of each menstrual cycle. The basalis or the stratum basale is the deeper, narrower zone of the endometrium. It is not lost during the menstrual phase and serves as a source of regeneration of the functionalis in the next menstrual cycle. As regards the myometrium, this is the thickest layer of the uterus. It is composed of three layers of the smooth muscles. There is an inner longitudinal, there is middle circular, and outer longitudinal. The size and number of muscle cells are related to the estrogen levels. In the pregnancy, there is hyperplasia and hypertrophy of the muscle layer, and I have told you in the first year MBBS that the longest smooth muscles in the body are that of a pregnant uterus, that it can attain a length of 500 microns. Otherwise, a single smooth muscle fiber is 10 to 100 microns in length. But in the case of the pregnancy, when there is hyperplasia and hypertrophy, the muscle becomes a very lengthy fiber. The thickness of the myometrium is 10 to 15 millimeter. It consists of three layers: a thin outer layer of longitudinally arranged muscle fibers, a middle layer of circularly disposed of muscle fibers, and an inner layer of longitudinal muscle fibers. Middle layer is the thickest layer and contains numerous large blood vessels and lymphatics, due to which this layer is also known as the stratum vasculaire. During the pregnancy, the myometrium passes through a period of great growth. This growth occurs as a result of proliferation. There will be increase in number as well as hypertrophy, that is the increase in size, and the smooth muscles becomes hypertrophied. Let's talk about the menstrual cycle. Beginning with the puberty and ending at the menopause, the endometrium of the body of the uterus passes through cyclical structural modifications which constitute the menstrual cycle. The duration of a menstrual cycle is variable, but it averages 28 days, but it can extend from 28 days to 35 days. We can divide the menstrual cycle into the four phases, which are the menstrual phase, the proliferative phase, the secretory phase, and the premenstrual phase. For easy understanding of the structural modification in the endometrium, the phases of the menstrual cycle will be described in the following order. Let's start with the proliferative phase. The phase follows the menstrual flow and is also known as the regenerative phase. At the end of each menstrual phase, the endometrium is reduced to a thin band of connective tissue which represents the stratum basale of the endometrium. It contains basal parts of the uterine glands and proximal portion of the spiral arteries. During the proliferative phase, regeneration of endometrium occurs from this narrow band, and this regeneration takes place under the influence of estrogen secreted by the growing ovarian follicles. Consequently, this phase is also known as the follicular phase. During the proliferative phase, the epithelial cells in the basal portions of the glands rapidly proliferate. That is, they increase in number by mitotic division. The newly produced cells not only reconstitute the uterine glands but also migrate to cover the denuded endometrial surface. The fibroblasts also proliferate and secrete collagen and ground substance. The spiral arteries gradually lengthen but do not extend into the superficial 1/3 of the endometrium. At the end of the proliferative phase, the endometrium attains a thickness of 3 mm. The glands have somewhat wavy outlines but are still narrow and straight. Secretory granules consisting mainly of glycogen accumulate in the basal regions of the gland cells. If we talk about the secretory phase, which is also known as the luteal phase, it begins after ovulation and depends on the corpus luteum secretions, that is the progesterone. The endometrial glands become dilated and highly convoluted. Can you see these? These are the uterine glands. And they assume a corkscrew shaped appearance. The secretory granules move to the apical region of the cells and are released into the lumen of the glands. The thickness of the endometrium gradually increases due largely to the hypertrophy of the gland cells and edema of the endometrial stroma. The spiral arteries become highly coiled and grow nearly to the surface of the endometrium. Eventually, the endometrium attains a thickness of about 6 mm. Let's talk about the premenstrual phase. If fertilization does not occur, the corpus luteum becomes non-functional about 12 days after ovulation, and it becomes corpus albicans, and there will be a rapid decrease in the blood levels of the progesterone and estrogens, and the declining hormone levels lead to dramatic changes in the blood supply of the functionalis. The spiral arteries of the endometrium undergo periodic contractions lasting for several hours, and this leads to ischemia, that is reduction in the blood supply of the functionalis, and therefore this phase is also known as ischemic phase. Due to the low blood supply, the uterine glands cease to secrete and the endometrial stroma decreases in height because of a marked reduction in edema. After about 2 days, the spiral arteries become completely constricted, leading to the necrosis of the functionalis. And after several hours of this constriction, the spiral arteries dilate once again. However, because the walls of their distal portions have been damaged due to prolonged ischemia, these arteries rupture and the blood escapes into the endometrium and breaks out into the uterine lumen. And the rapidly escaping blood causes sloughing of the patches of the necrotic functionalis. The blood, uterine fluid and sloughing stroma and epithelial cells from the functionalis, all these are discharged through the vagina as menses, and this is the menstrual flow. Although the entire functionalis becomes necrosed, it is not completely sloughed from the uterine wall at once, but this process continues for about 4 days. If we talk about the uterine cervix, the bulk of the wall of the cervix is made up of dense collagenous connective tissue. This is the cervix, the cervical part of the uterus. Only a few smooth muscle fibers are present, so softening of the strong connective tissue of the cervix occurs before the childbirth to allow the dilatation of the cervix. This softening occurs due to extensive destruction of the collagen fibers under the influence of the hormone relaxin, which is secreted by the corpus luteum of pregnancy. Already I have told you. And this narrow cervical canal is lined by cervical mucosa, which is also called endocervix. This mucosa consists of mucus secreting simple columnar epithelium overlying a fibrocellular lamina propria. The epithelium invaginates into the lamina propria to form simple tubular glands. The cervical mucosa does not show any remarkable changes during the menstrual cycle and does not slough during the menstruation. The nature of the secretion of the cervical glands varies during the menstrual cycle. In the follicular phase, that is prior to ovulation, the mucus produced by the cervical glands has a watery consistency, which facilitates the entry of spermatozoa from the vagina into the uterus. But during the luteal phase and in pregnancy, the secretions of the cervical glands become viscous and form a plug of thickened mucus in the cervical canal, which prevents the entry of spermatozoa and microorganisms into the uterine cavity. The ovarian hormone progesterone controls the changes in the viscosity of the cervical gland secretions. The aperture of a cervical gland may sometimes become occluded so that it becomes dilated as it is filled up by the mucus. Such a cystic cervical gland is called a Nabothian cyst. We will study in gynecology about the Nabothian cyst. If we talk about the vagina consists of 3 layers, the mucosa, muscularis and adventitia. It is just like the esophagus because it has got the stratified squamous non-keratinized epithelium. There is a lamina propria which is loose areolar connective tissue. There are fibers, the collagen and elastic fibers. There's a very rich, this is very rich in blood vessels, a lot of blood vessels. No glands are seen in the vagina. The vaginal fluid comes from the transudation and cervical glands. As regards the muscularis externa, there are smooth muscles in two layers, the inner circular and outer longitudinal, and then we have got the adventitia, which is dense fibroelastic connective tissue. The female external genitalia, they are known as the vulva collectively. The vulva comprises of the mons pubis, the labia majora, labia minora, clitoris, vestibule, and certain glands that open into the vestibule. The mons pubis is a rounded prominence over the pubic symphysis. It is covered with coarse pubic hair. This elevation is produced by subcutaneous adipose tissue. Then the labia majora are two longitudinal folds of skin which form the lateral boundaries of the urogenital cleft. The outer surface of a labium majus bears coarse curly hair. The inner surface is smooth and hairless. Sebaceous and sweat glands are abundant on both surfaces. The core of each labium majus is formed by a large amount of adipose tissue and a few smooth muscle fibers. If we talk about the labia minora, these are labia minora are paired hairless folds of skin which form lateral walls of the vestibule. Labia minora are paired hairless folds of skin which form lateral walls of the vestibule. This is the vestibule. The core of connective tissue within each fold is devoid of fat but contains a large number of blood vessels. The clitoris. The clitoris consists of two cavernous erectile bodies, the corpora cavernosa, which end in a small tubercle called glans clitoridis. The skin over the clitoris is very thin and contains numerous sensory nerve endings. If we talk about the vestibule, it is the space into which urethra and vagina opens. This is the opening of the vagina, this is the opening of the urethra, and this is the vestibule. It is lined by stratified squamous epithelium. Numerous small mucus secreting glands are located in the wall of the vestibule, and these glands are known as the minor vestibular glands, and they occur mainly around the urethral openings and near the clitoris. A pair of major vestibular glands, which are known as the Bartholin's glands, are also located in the lateral wall of the vestibule. These glands are analogous to the bulbourethral glands of the male. They are tubuloalveolar glands which secrete lubricating mucus. Their ducts open near the vagina, opening at the base of the hymen. In virgins, a thin transverse crescentic fold called hymen is present at the opening of the vagina into the vestibule. It consists of a thin layer of vascular connective tissue covered on both sides with the mucous membrane, similar to that of the vagina. External genitalia are abundantly supplied with sensory nerve endings. The external genitalia are abundantly supplied with sensory nerve endings, including the Pacinian and Meissner's corpuscles. The sensations conveyed by these nerve endings play an important role in the physiological response during sexual arousal and act.